Greetings and salutations, my friend. If you're for some reason unaware, recently a documentary was released on male detransitioners in which I participated. For that reason, I invited the creators of the film, Jennifer Lahl and Gary Powell, as well as my mate Ritchie, who co-starred in the documentary alongside me, to have a conversation about the newly released film. In case you haven't watched it yet, I've included some clips from the film in this video, so after you're done watching this, please go watch this new documentary. It's called Lost Boys Searching for Manhood. So I hope you enjoy this conversation we had, and if not, then it's my fault. Don't blame those guys.
I was a pretty normal little boy for the most part. I used to like to, play in the dirt. I liked cars. I liked pretty much the normal little boy stuff.
I thought being Tauran and being a man was the problem, and so I was just trying to run away from it.
When I was a teen, I was bullied quite a lot by peers of my age. I started to think of myself as a failure if a man
transitioned, and I'd Google gender dysphoria. So I typed that in, went to the NHS's website, and it was like, unease with your body and taking risks, depression, and it was so general, actually. It was like so general.
Hello everyone, today I am here with Jennifer Lahl and Gary Powell from Center for Bioethics and Culture, and of course the one and only Ritchie. Ritchie, you are the first person to come back to my channel. It's your second appearance on my channel, which actually makes you the secondary protagonist.
See, you need to do a little Ritchie playlist now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the amount of videos in which I've mentioned your name,
bless you,
is, yeah, it's somewhere up there. Anyway, recently, Jennifer, Gary, you've published this documentary presenting testimonies of 5 for detransitioned males, myself and Ritchie included. So I invited you here to talk more about this film, the filming process, and perhaps the reasons why you've decided to make this. And previously, you've made another film focusing on detransition, but that was focused specifically on females. Detransition Diaries, Saving Our Sisters. Was that correct name there?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that documentary first?
When we realized that the audience is really connected with the stories of the detransitioners, we went into production on the Detransition Diaries. And for no particular reason, we decided just to focus on 3 young women who detransitioned. That film came out, and immediately parents came to us and said, please tell the story of our boys, our sons. And so with that call from parents, we felt we couldn't say no. And so here we are. We have released a film. It's 100% male cast. We on purpose wanted men to speak for men. We wanted men experts to speak, male fathers to speak. And that's sort of the genesis of the film.
Yeah. So the title of the film is Lost Boys Search for Manhood. Why do you think the stories of males who went through that are as important to tell as the women's stories?
Well, because they're human beings. We're all human beings, and anybody who's been harmed by, this medical, I wanted to say butchery, but I guess that's not an appropriate word to say.
Appropriate, yeah, especially
Medical
considering the
neglect,
surgery. I call it butchery all the times.
medical harm, medical neglect. I mean, we're all human beings. We've all been touched by this. I, in a previous life, was a nurse. I worked for 20 years in hospital nursing. I do not like to see doctors treat people poorly. I do not like to see people being harmed. I do not like seeing doctors get rich harming people. And so, you know, that's what motivates me, is that we're all human beings. And why just tell the stories of the women and the men are similar, but they're very unique. Just like one man's story is similar to another man's story, but there's also unique things that are going on because we're all just different. There's not any of us that are exactly the same. So, and I wanted to work with Gary too, because, you know, Callie Fell, who was our other director and producer, you know, I thought we need to have a male perspective as we're navigating all these interviews. And then we go into the script writing. And, you know, Gary is a longtime friend and very trusted colleague. So here we are.
And I've got a particular interest in the issue of gender ideology and people making mistakes of the kind that were discussed during the film. Because I've been a gay rights activist for over 40 years, you know, from the 80s when society was very homophobic, and I'm seeing a lot, or the, you know, the gay people are seeing a lot of young gay men and lesbians identifying as transgender, when in fact they're not. They are gay or lesbian. Of course, there are lots of heterosexual males and females who are being drawn into transgender identification as well. But I came into this because of a particular concern about what was happening to the gay rights movement and to young lesbian and gay people. So I see it as a gay rights issue, and that's one of the reasons I've published a lot on this. And I've spoken a lot about it, and it's one of the reasons why I've been very active in this campaign. And it's an educational, and this was an educational film, rather than a political film. This was to let people know what was happening, because the truth is being suppressed, as you will know. It's actually difficult to show these films and to get a platform for them. And what we need is education, and people were just speaking in their own words, giving an account of their own personal experiences. And I think that's a very powerful way to educate the public.
Yeah.
And that,
you know,
I could just add, sorry, I could just add on to that. So far, some of the just personal comments that people have said to me about the film is they absolutely love the fact that we don't push an agenda on the audience. We let you all tell your stories and let the audience come to their own conclusion, which is why so far none of our films have ever been pulled or flagged off of YouTube, you know, because we just let people tell their stories.
Hello again. I'm so sorry for interrupting. Just wanted to let you know that if you wish to watch the full version of this conversation, it will soon be available on my new Patreon channel, which should be running in a couple of days or so. So for just $1 a month, you'll get more content from me. If you like watching my content, and if you don't, still give me that dollar, because I need cigarettes. I'm kidding, I don't actually smoke. Please enjoy the rest of this video and have a good day. Gary, related to what you said about it being gay rights issue, I agree with you, and I have observed and talked to multiple people who have tried to transition because of internalized homophobia, young men and women who might be gay or lesbian, or who believe they are the opposite sex. And that was the case for me as well. And that is one thing I didn't mention in this film. And I was still not comfortable talking about my own sexual orientation around the time. I was opening up about things quite slowly. And that is, if there is one thing I could say,
if I could go back and we could record all of it all over again, that is one thing I would definitely include there. So that's one thing I wish was there, but it wasn't. But that's not exactly your guys' fault. That was mine. And Richie, I believe you have some thoughts about this topic regarding being gay and
Yeah, I
trying to
mean,
transition.
well, this is it. So I've struggled for many years accepting this part myself. It's what drove my OCD as a kid, because it started with like the general expression, which is quite normal for a lot of gay men specifically, to have this sort of dressing up like pre-puberty stage where you're trying to imitate girls in a way, and that gets mixed up.
And I think it was about 7 or 8. And I became obsessed with wanting to be a ballerina. And I realised after a few events that a boy can't really be a ballerina the way I want it to be. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion began.
But my anxiety went out of control with it, because I was born at the back end of the 80s. And, you know, Gary knows exactly what the 80s and 90s were like. And the 2000s went like a million miles better. And it was just,
Depending where you are, too.
I don't know. I think like the Northeast was its own like specific like problem area, but to be honest, it was like a small town issue, like everywhere in the UK. That all had this sort of homophobia built in. The Northeast happens to be, for the man side, quite macho, quite tough, and I just wasn't any of that, and I was just like, a fucking hell. So I was very scared, and by the time I made the discourse, I've got people now telling us that after all these years, like, I'm struggling with it and now coming to accept it over the last few years and having some really awesome relationships. And now they're telling me that I'm actually straight because I've got autogynephilia, right? And it's like, and this is where the whole gay GP comes in, the gay AGP. And it's like, people think that all the homosexual transsexuals are like this sacred caste of porn writers and soft hearts who are all like, ooh, I just want to be a girl. But I'm sorry, they've got a very similar pipeline to the men as well. Sorry, to the straight men. And it's like, you know, you have like drag queens, you have a lot of gay people who are like obsessed with doing drag, like in this performative way to be seen as a woman. I was like, is that not a form of like autogynephilia in a way, even though it's performative, because they've got the desire to do it? And it's like, why is
sorry to interrupt you here. Do you think all forms of cross-dressing fall under the AGP umbrella?
No, I think there are people. No, I think there are people who genuinely get like there, and I don't know what the reason is, but there is something wired in the brain that makes them, whenever they wear a dress or whatever, or be seen or have their nails done or whatever, that makes them go, oh, this is better, this is more me. And I don't think anyone's been able to like pick apart what that is. And I personally think it's all about like having your sort of your difference as a man validated, but that validation comes through this lens of being a woman instead. Because where I am, you can't really be a soft guy. You'll just get ripped apart. So therefore, I'm going to be a trans woman or a woman, as I think I said in the documentary as well. Sorry. So what I was basically saying on, or thinking on that thread was, I think the wires kind of get crisscrossed and mashed up, and a lot of these cross interpretations come into play. But I've talked to too many detransitioners to know that even the ones who are gay, even the ones who are like, who are never really exposed to much internet, there is still that degree of like, I feel, and like sort of not fueled but alive sexually when I'm seen as a woman, because it allows me to demonstrate my sexuality in a way that's been repressed before. This is allowed, therefore it's all go, it's great, it's good, this is allowed in this mode. But when I'm in my other mode, as seen as as Ritchie or whatever, it's like it's not allowed. That's where my head was before. It was like I can be gay and be attracted to men because I've got a very strong natural attraction to men, like smell, sight, sound.
Me too.
I've tried to be with women before, and it's like I like women. I get on with them very, very well, but I don't have whatever it is I have with men, where it's like, you know, like the bodies don't do it for me like the way it does with a man, for instance. And it just came to the realization for me far too late that I think what I was trying to do was validate my sexuality through this mode of being a woman.
One thing you've mentioned made me think about something very specific. How, you know, this idea that you are attracted to men, but if you know you're being culturally conditioned into thinking that that is something wrong, or maybe perhaps that there it isn't a thing, you might start seeing yourself as a woman in this sort of mental picture. And you know, I'm thinking back, and I don't remember, Jennifer, Gary, I don't remember if it is something I've mentioned in the film, because I know this was we talked much longer, obviously, and it would be a very long film if all of it was included. But when I was 9 years old, I used to pretend to be a wife of one of my classmates. And I guess that was my way of saying, oh, I have a crush on this boy, but I'm a boy myself, so I can't have that. Therefore, my thoughts around it are, well, I can be his wife. And it was just so culturally conditioned into thinking that I couldn't possibly be his husband.
It's also very, very autistic, isn't it?
So the thing about the autistic mind is it's very black and white. It loves categories. It loves rules. And what I was hearing from my male patients were, well, to be male, you have to be like this, 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 and this. I'm not like this, therefore I'm other. I'm non-male, therefore I must be female.
The one claim, because for me, there's only one claim that people make that I disagree with. When they say that they're the opposite sex stroke gender, when a male says he's a woman, a female says she's a male, and presents culturally in the clothes or with the demeanor of a male or female with a corresponding name and a corresponding pronoun. The only, as far as I'm concerned, if somebody wants to present themselves culturally as somebody of the opposite sex and wants to, I don't agree with men going into women's bathrooms, of course, and changing rooms. So that's something that I would certainly contest. But if a male wants to dress culturally as women dress in our society, I want to give themselves a female name and put on makeup and go out, I don't have any problems with that at all. And I don't feel that if they say, well, look, I do this because it's something that I like to do, it makes me feel comfortable, and I'm not claiming to be a woman, but this is how I like to present myself. I don't have any problem with that, because I think there's something quite healthy about challenging some of the rigidity of gender stereotypes, which we had done. We'd done quite well until recently, and now, of course, it's being imposed.
Sorry,
But
Gary.
it's only the claim that a person is the opposite sex stroke gender that I would take issue with. What do you think about that, Ritchie? Does that make any sense?
Jennifer's dying jump in, and I think
Well, I
Alex.
was just going to say, because of where I live in the backyard of San Francisco. I mean, I can get on any public transportation or bus or go to a park, and I will see all kinds of people. But let's speak about men. I will see men with makeup and dresses, and I don't know if they're AGP. I don't know if they're cross-dressers. I don't know if they just come from Drag Queen Story Hour. You know, I just don't know. But you know, it happens all the time out here. So.
I think unless Alex, you wanted to come in, I'll go jump back and answer.
Yeah, I have a comment, Gary. I think you know what you mentioned, that some people are just happy by cross-dressing, dressing as the opposite sex, or behaving or even appropriating those cultural elements usually associated with the behavior and temper of the opposite sex. I think the problem is when it comes to this intense feeling of hatred towards your own body, towards your own maleness or femaleness. In a lot of cases, just reducing it to the desire to dress up as the opposite sex isn't really reflective of what those people are experiencing in relationship to themselves. That's why I think there is a huge difference between those people who just want to cross-dress and those who have a strong negative feelings towards their own bodies, wants to go with procedures to change their appearance, at least, because I don't think you can change your sex, not with today's availability of technology and medicine. Whether that will be possible one day, I think that's a discussion for another day.
That's a really good point, actually, and that's a crucial point you make, Alexander, because the whole film is about people's suffering, young people's suffering, and then trying to find some resolution. Gender dysphoria, which could be obviously a very distressing condition, and so that, yes, I suppose I was just thinking in terms of other people's tolerance, really, and what people see, and what people are willing to accept, and of course, it would go if somebody had gender dysphoria. The tolerance probably, well, definitely should increase in terms of wanting to support the person in a difficult journey that they're on.
I think, and part of the way that we sort of let these stories of you all evolve was just, tell us your story. What were you like as a little boy? What was your family like? What were you interested in? What were you like when puberty hit, and how did that change the feelings you have? And just the glaringness of so many of the young men in the film who had all these comorbidities, mental health issues, depression, autism, addiction to pornography, all this, just social cues within their family and their community. I love the time when in the film Torrin talks about how he was just made fun of because he was helping his mother by just carrying her purse. What normally any child should be affirmed, saying, "Oh, that's so kind of you to be concerned and considerate and helpful," instead of mocking and humiliating him.
And there's just these clear, hard-cut gender roles that never got crossed, and I didn't feel like I fit into any of these. But I remember one time, I was going to my grandparents' house with my mom, and she set her purse down because she was trying to carry other things. So I was it's okay, I'll pick it up and carry it in. And I had a family member laugh at me, mockingly, for picking that up and carrying it in. Boys don't carry purses.
Sort of talking about even Brian, where he says any good therapist would have said, "Let's get you sober." And then we can deal with what's going on in your life. And it's glaringly obvious to me that there's so much going on in all of your lives that were just glossed over and transitioned.
There was a great deal of chaos in all of our lives, and as I said in the film, no one who's happy transitions. It always comes from a place of extreme distress.
No happy person transitions because they are happy.
People with paraphilias and autism and learning difficulties tend to be the ones who do a lot of offending out and about. If you ever look at the prolific attacks that happen in autism, is always there. Because autism has a duality. You have high-functioning, highly intelligent people, and you have high-functioning, low intelligence. And the vast majority of the low intelligence ones won't be able to determine when they're breaching boundaries. And this is the problem. And there's also a huge issue with restricting that. You can't restrict it. You can't put it out back in the box now, because then you're going to fuck everything up. So that makes us go to the point where there's no point talking about is it right or wrong. It's talking about what matters is the motivations. And anyone who says that they are just doing it for non-sexual reasons is manipulating you. That is my opinion.
One thing I've noticed in regards to the way people react to people transitioning is that females who transition tend to be are more likely to be seen as victims in all of it, whereas men are more likely to be seen as perverts.
Yeah.
And well, where is that coming from? And I think a big part of that is that we are culturally sexualizing women. So therefore, if a woman will be always seen as a sexual object, overly sexualized, then of course a male who will be wearing clothing typically associated with the female sex will be seen as pervert because he is seen as engaging in something sexual, as if being feminine in of itself is something sexually explicit, which I disagree with 100%. And I think the whole this whole understanding we have of that there's either homosexual transitioners who are really gay, and then you have the AGPs. I think this is a simplification of things. I think there's a lot of cases who don't simply fit either side of that, or perhaps people can be a little bit of both in some cases, and that's why I'm never a big fan of this sort of explanation that there's just two categories there.
No, but Alex, I will jump in and say that
Sure.
males and their sexuality and thought is how males express their thought in their body, and their sexuality is not the same as women. We are different. We are different in a sense. And I agree with the reductiveness, and I don't think the theory is even extended by Anne Lawrence and like from Ray Blanchard's Autogynephilia theories. I do think you're right that there is a lot of incompletion. They are overly relied on, but there is a truth there because it's the study of the male sexuality. It is different. It manifests itself differently, and no one wants to admit to have an asexual motivation, but everything you do in life has a degree of a sexual motivation. It's just this is a lot easier to pinpoint and clear, whereas say a man who may have a sexual motivation to get laid every weekend, so he goes out on the town, dresses in like tight t-shirt, he's going to the gym, whatever, and he's hitting on as many women as possible. His life is motivated by his sexual interests. And I kind of feel like what's happening with the autogynephilia thing is that the lens is firmly on people who go through this, and it's very, very harsh, where I'm kind of saying, yeah, that is part of it, but it doesn't have to have this obscenely negative connotation that everyone has built to, because we're just repeating the shame cycle. It's like male sexuality is different. I wasn't like, when I was thinking about transition, I wasn't doing this because of like it was all like sexually like overwhelmed as then I had to transition because of that. That was, I would say, a very, very small part of it, but it was there. To deny it wasn't there is just as bad as saying that it's all there. But you don't transition for like, yes, there are reasons for autism, but autism and sexuality are also very complicated. They tend to be externalized. On like this, there's a reason why I think a lot of people with paraphilias are autistic, or like that it's been studied before. It's not a mystery. You know, it's all that black and white thinking. I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot here.
Yeah, I mean, that some things you said, Richie, that I agree with, some that I might not necessarily agree with, and I will have to agree that there's a higher rate of paraphilias in autistic individuals, definitely. What I would disagree with is that there's always a sexual motivation in our action, and it regardless of transitioning. I think there's a lot of things I'm doing that have no sexual motivation whatsoever. I mean, spending 15 hours a week reading philosophy, it's not like I'm reading it thinking, oh, this will get me laid. You know, and even when I was transitioning, I never thought of it as a sexual thing. And I think, you know, individuals have very
But
different
I will push
relationships with
back on that, Alex,
sexuality,
because
right?
I'm pretty sure in the film like in what you mentioned before, you were talking about like attracting that sort of partner, so you didn't have to, so you could circumvent not being gay. And it's like, yes, you transition for yourself, but you're also doing it for a potential partner as well. And no, reading philosophy may not have a sexual motivation unless you're a certain big YouTuber who I won't say. But the connotation that I was talking about there, about how it's all sexuality, I was mainly referring the need to cross dress out in public. That's not there has to be something there to it. There is no otherwise, like you could get like say I imagine my dad going out and cross dressing is like a wild thought to me. This is he's a proper man's man, and he doesn't give a fuck about gender stereotypes. He just is what he is, and it's like if he did that now, I'll be like, why the fuck you doing that, Dad? That's like why, you know? It doesn't make any sense, unless there is a stronger motivation that you've carried from your privacy outside. You don't just start from I'm going to do this straight away. It starts with privacy, the internal manipulation, and then the external. And I know I use that word and it sounds horrible, but we have to remember we did tell people that we were someone else. We had a different name, different pronoun, and we had bought into this thing and made it our lives. That is a manipulation, and I do think that is a fundamental part of it. It's just I think a lot of the responsibility gets unfairly weighed on us in unlike female detransitioners, for instance, because they're women, whereas we're men. So it's like, oh, you're a man, so you are responsible for the society's issues in some way, and you have some doing into this because you are a man.
And that takes us back into the concept of shame that was explored
then,
in the film.
It's very central in the film, actually.
Yeah, there was sort of this sense that being sensitive, being really expressive was kind of an embarrassing thing.
And that's where this idea started that, you know, if I'm not good enough to be a man, it's going to affect my entire life in a negative way. So life would be much easier for me if I was born a woman.
There's this whole aspect of shame and just rejection around femininity or any sort of me touching femininity. I just became obsessive over.
Actually, a question to Jennifer. Did you have a clear idea that you wanted the concept of, or the theme of shame to be central to the film, or did it happen as a result of you seeing this parallel between the stories being told in the film?
We wanted to explore it. We wanted, you know, before we went into production, Callie and Gary and I had quite a few private conversations just on background with people that we wanted to just get their thoughts. And for a variety of reasons, you know, either this is the world that they live in for their own personal decisions about their transition, or they work in, you know, the space of working with people that have detransitioned or gender confused. So, you know, several of the themes which you'll see laid out in the film were the theme of puberty and what happens when these otherwise goofy young kids, boys, you know, have this massive surge of hormones and this, you know, how did that, we wanted to explore the issue of shame and pornography. We wanted to explore the issue of mental health. But we didn't have any expectations for what that would look like, but those were themes that we wanted to explore. Even in the title, we didn't want to use detransition or transition because those are flag words, you know, that will get attention on algorithms. You know, I think you saw maybe last week I posted that we couldn't even get one company, very top of the line PR company wouldn't run our press release. They said it violated their editorial guidelines. Because
have you considered putting this on other platforms as well, like Odyssey and Rumble? And
it's parked
Could be a good idea.
It's parked on Rumble just in case, so it's already there. We just flip it on, and
One of the interesting phenomena in the film was the phenomenon of people feeling relieved after having relieved that their sex drive had been hammered.
After those 6 months, I thought, yeah, I want to keep doing this. It felt good. There was, as they say, kind of the euphoria. I liked the way that people treated me, so I went on the hormones. I was very happy with the way that the hormones, took my sex drive down.
By either taking
I was one of those,
estrogen.
actually.
You were one of them, Alexander. Yes, and I by taking estrogen or by the surgeries, and there was this feeling of relief. And I think you touched on that as well, Ritchie. I recall, and so we were talking about the kind of sexualized element of paraphilias and AGP, but also there's clearly a theme of people being tormented by their sex drive. I think particularly young gay men, maybe young gay women as well, depending on what background you're from, and this being a relief because you then don't have the guilt and shame associated with your raging sex drive. So I think that there's another, because this really ties into the issue of gay rights as well. I remember in the 80s, the early 80s, when I first came out, I was 18, and we were encouraged to accept our own sexuality. A lot of the work was talking to other people, being comfortable with other gay people, being comfortable with your own same-sex oriented feelings. And I just wonder whether something's being lost in our culture now, that young people, do you think it's the case that young people are becoming less comfortable about their sexual feelings in general?
There's a lot of homophobia out there, I would say. And I think even the apparent heterosexual transitioners, I think even they're suffering the impacts from, again, it's this idea of, I'm not your ideal man, therefore I'm a woman, tied in with I've got an attraction to men, but it might be a mild attraction to men. It might be even like a small part of it. But I think there are a lot more, in my opinion, bisexual people than heterosexual or gay transitioners. Like, that is the hidden majority. There's a great deal of bisexual people. And within that, I think there is an element of homophobia that really does drive it forward. Sorry.
Well, I think that what you said, Gary, applies to heterosexual men in the film too.
Yes.
And I think that's part of the messaging. And Ritchie talks about this in the film. You're bad. You have these feelings. It's because I'm a bad man. I'm a bad human being. I should be able to look at a woman and just, not think anything or feel anything. And it's not because we haven't done a good job teaching young men as they grow up from little boys and they start becoming adolescents and go through puberty, that these are normal feelings. These are normal things that happen to your body. I have one question to Ritchie and to Alexander, if I can ask it.
Sure.
Would you agree? Are you concerned with, do you know why that we're seeing an uptick in young boys? I mean, it used to be all focused on the girls that are social contagion and ROGD and blah, 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 blah. Do you agree that the uptick is real in young boys? Gender confused? Do you have any thoughts on why that is?
The internet.
I agree.
The internet,
I agree.
absolutely. I think there's an attempt to say it's all pornography, but it's like, no, to get to the point where you want to transition, you need a lot of other things in place. So you need to have the absolutist mindset. You need to be very anxious. You need to be unsure of your body. So you can see like how these things layered out in our own stories. For instance, a lot of us were late developers. That creates this body like dysmorphia. We're anxious because of things that are happening with ourselves, and we're internalizing a lot of stuff. And then we get to this place where, oh, I'm like this. I don't know why. I need an answer. And then people are like, here's an answer. And they're like, oh, this is a good answer. Oh, wait, you feel the same. You feel the same. You feel the same. You feel the same. We're friends. Great. I've got a community. Any problem, you can report back to them online 24/7. It's absolutely perfect for the likes of me, who is addicted to the computer, who is a lot of anxiety, who is absolutist, and wants answers to these very complex questions that take effort. So, and also with regards to the rise to the boys have always like massively outscaled everyone else. It's just the girls have caught up a lot more, but we're still more,
Yeah.
there are still more male transitioners than there are women, despite the increase. And it is beginning to plateau. But yeah, I think fundamentally it's just too easy for a very quiet, soft lad to, I'm a woman. I don't want to be like the rest of the men, but we're coming in different shades. I just wish I knew that it was like you don't have to be like this Chad-esque, like ultra buff dude and who's like walking around. You can be a soft guy if you want, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, oh, dude, I wish I knew that too back
Yeah.
then. Absolutely. And I want to go back to the question Gary asked previously around sexuality and the feeling of relief when the sex drive goes down. And my experience with that is actually very different. Why I felt that shame around my sexuality and sex drive.
When I first hit puberty, I started to feel shame about those changes happening to my body because I felt like it was wrong. Not in the sense like I was born in a wrong body, but more that I saw it as morally wrong to develop those sorts of feelings around sexuality.
And I think it's a very important context that is not included in the film. But I grew up in a Catholic country, and I've always seen everything that was sexual as inherently morally wrong, and those thoughts followed me throughout my adult life as well. Even just a few years ago, I was so convinced that all forms of sexual behavior are morally wrong, even in a heterosexual marriage. Like if a man is married to a woman and they have sex, in my eyes, that is still immoral. Like I've heard everyone just should be pure and clean and just stay a virgin for the rest of their lives. I no longer disagree. I mean, I no longer agree with myself there, but because I had those thoughts, when I started developing the physical drive to have those sexual feelings, I saw them as evil. In my eyes, I was possessed by a demon, and it doesn't help that the school I was at was shaming this sort of behavior, and the church as well, the Catholic Church. I was told that if I masturbate, I am a evil person who's going to grow up to be a rapist, right? Like I was supposed to contain those feelings. And another topic I really want to touch on that I think is important, it's the central theme of shame, right? And some of the participants talked about the shame of like toxic masculinity, that boys are being told that they can't be masculine because that's toxic.
I don't think that the strategy that we've adopted as a society, which is shame them for their innate natures, I don't think that's an effective strategy. I think it's led to a lot of these trans identification.
I never related to that growing up.
Yeah,
and I think Ritchie, you might agree with me there. Yeah, and I think those were different times.
I think these are two separate different topics, and I think again that there's a narrative requirement to say this is all this one thing and it's toxic masculinity, or it's all this one thing, it's all pornography. And it's like, how about those issues alone are troublesome? But toxic masculinity wasn't me growing up in a manly environment or in a working class environment. Do you know what I mean? That's not, that's life. That is humans. You can't call that toxic. That's just how people are. And it wasn't as if it was like, there were some difficult times, but it wasn't all completely savage. It wasn't toxic. A lot of it was for a reason. There's a reason that men behave the way they do culturally and naturally. And it's like, we need to start listening to why that is. Maybe not all of it was bad. Maybe there's a reason some men do things. Maybe it's to protect themselves from certain things. Maybe there's more to it than what we've put in. But toxic masculinity, I didn't transition because I thought all men were bad. I did feel like, oh, I've got a lot of shame for my own sex and for feeling the thoughts that I did, which were, as you said, evil and dark. Like, why the fuck am I having any thoughts for other guys? Why is that happening? I must be morally like unjust. There must be something wrong with us that I need to fix. Do you know what I mean? I want to say before we do wrap up, because I do have to disappear, and I think Jennifer does too. It has been a fabulous conversation. Is that it is important to just hear those experiences without a specific narrative attached from the individuals. My only critique would be that, and to be honest, I liked hearing from Graham, Dr. Az, and the others who weren't actually like detransitioners. It does give a nice contrast, but I think even them, even though I agree with a lot of what they said, not everything, but a lot of what they said, it's like they are even themselves still underpinning their own views and narratives on the situation, like toxic masculinity and reducing it all to one thing like shame. And it's like, maybe it's a lot more nuanced and complex than that. And maybe all we need is those unfiltered raw stories of detransitioners and let people make up their own fucking mind, because I think what we're used to with the trans narrative is, this is the narrative, this is how they feel, and this is what it means, off you go. And it's like, nah, maybe it is a bit more nuanced than that. But that's my final thought. Thank you,
Well,
Alex.
I'm with Ritchie on this one 100%, and I think that our stories have been told by other sources before. It was either on one side you had trans activists who tried to present a certain narrative of detransition that it never or usually never happens because of regret, and then on the other side you have the more conservative side trying to paint a specific narrative that. That's why, I think it all should be coming from the raw source of our actual story, our actual experiences and thoughts. So I'm 100% agree on that. And we're nearing the end of this video. So to those viewers who have perhaps watched this film and it was their first experience with me and Ritchie. They don't know nothing about us, and based on that film they might be thinking we had a rough journey throughout lives. But is that all there is to it, or are we living happy fulfilled lives? So Ritchie, where are you in your life journey at this point, and how long?
I've got a boyfriend now, which is nice, but there are a lot of challenges, like sexually. There's a great deal of numbness, but there are issues that I feel like might be able to get worked through, and it's not all bad. And I think I was so worried about those specific issues that I avoided like going with anyone after surgery. But really, like, it's just not how I thought it would be. It's like, it's not, I don't know, like, how should I say it? It's people aren't as bad as I thought they were in my head, and I'm reuniting with family. I'm just trying to pick up my life from where it was in me mid-20s, where it just went all to shit, and it's just like, by the way, I have one final thought that's been bothering us all day. Is there were parts in the film when my hair was like this, and I was like, oh my god, I need to move that hair, oh my god. But yes, I just need to say that because I've noticed my hair. Yeah.
Your hair looked fine. It looked
Cute
great.
anyway, so
No, those were those pranks and ups like that. And I was like, oh my god, I need to
No, it looked fine.
But
I
yeah,
think you
so
look cute. So
bless you, you too.
I tell you, all of you were so courageous making that film. I'm sure that film will really help a lot of people. And
so.
you've made an enormous impact by doing that. Thank you. Yeah, we're all really grateful to you for doing that. It's been,
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
And Alex for putting this on. Alex, I'm gonna have to head off.
Yeah,
So I've got-
I'm happy for you that things are going well in your life, Ritchie. I have a boyfriend myself too, but I'm not gonna reveal anymore because there are certain things I like to keep private.
It's not me, by the way. If things were talking code, right? We're not together. No. We've got our own boyfriends.
But that would be quite an interesting sequel. Lost boys who found each other.
oh my gosh, yes.
Oh my goodness.
I'm very pleased that
bless you,
going in the
Ritchie.
right direction for you both, and
Yeah.
wishing you every happiness in the future.
Thank you.
And thank you for having us on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Fantastic discussion.
Yeah.